Excellencies, dear colleagues, very good morning to all of you. I am delighted to welcome you to the IEA's Big Ideas Distinguished Speaker Series. Before we start, I would like to first of all acknowledge Ambassador Masuma Gayani. Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for flying from Rome to join us today, to bring us together. And as I am sure Madam Commissioner would remember, the first time Madam Commissioner and I met was in Rome when your minister organized an Africa event there. And thank you very much for that too. I would also like to thank our Australian colleagues for giving us this nice venue. I think many of you are all aware of the our Big Ideas speaker series. We invite several distinguished speakers from different parts of the world. We started with Mary Robinson, the former President of Ireland, and several CEOs, ministers, presidents, vice presidents, to hear from them their preoccupation in terms of energy, in terms of environment, economy, and also other related issues. And today, it is my great honor to welcome our esteemed guest, Her Excellency Amani Abou-Zeid, who is the African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure, Energy, Tourism, among others. You have a big portfolio, Madam Commissioner. We are all aware of that. She has been, over the past 3 decades, pushing the African energy and infrastructure issues high in the agenda of the policymakers in the continent of Africa and also internationally. She has an impressive trajectory of professional development at the UNDP, USAID, African Development Bank, and then recently, I think about 1 year ago, she became the Commissioner of African Union. She has been a big, I have, to be honest with you, Madam Commissioner, I have been following the African Union so many years, but we now see a momentum in terms of energy growing thanks to you. And IEA has, of course, immediately identified this momentum, and we are very happy to work with you. But her hard work for Africa, for African people, for African energy world has been recognized several times by different governments and international organizations. We are going to hear from Madam Commissioner her views about Africa and energy, and after that we are going to sign an MOU with African Union and IEA. We believe this will be a very important cornerstone for many different projects that we are going to undertake. Madam Commissioner, I discussed a few issues ranging from energy efficiency to role of natural gas in the continent, from there to the clean cooking and the role of women there, for which Madam Commissioner is very passionate. So, ladies and gentlemen, today, in fact, as you know, we arrange everything very, Madam Commissioner, very punctual at the IEA. We have this very event on the World Africa Day. Today, 25th of May, is the World Africa Day, and it is the day that we are going to host one of the leading figures of Africa, especially in terms of energy, and it is a day that the International Energy Agency, since almost 20 years, working very hard on this African energy access issues, will have the opportunity to have a MOU with African Union and accelerate the work afterwards. With these words, I would like you to please join me to welcome Her Excellency.
Mr. Birol, I'm humbled by this presentation. And there's no pressure at all. Huh? You didn't put any pressure on me at all. Good morning, everyone. First and before anything, today is Africa Day. I couldn't be happier or prouder of our brothers and sisters and everyone in our beloved continent, Africa. Africa, as you know, is leaping. Africa, as you know, is performing very, very high, not just economically, but also on the governance side, infrastructure and energy, innovation and creativity, ICT. And today, I hope that with this event and many more of these events taking place around the world, but beyond that day, we continue this leap into the future that we all deserve and that our beloved continent truly and genuinely deserves. So I'm honored to represent the African Union Commission today on this special occasion, of course, of the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with IEA. But also today, as I said, is Africa Day. I extend warm greetings and best wishes to all Africans and friends of Africa. I would like to reaffirm the strong commitment of the African Union to work with all Africans and friends of Africa to create a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development as espoused by our Agenda 2063. The task of realizing the aspirations of Agenda 2063 is enormous, but not insurmountable. In energy, for example, our top priority is for every African to have access to affordable and sustainable energy by 2030, in line with UN Agenda for Sustainable Development. Yet, about 600 million Africans still lack access to electricity. Only 49% of the African population and less than 43% in sub-Saharan Africa have access to electricity. This is not acceptable, not morally, not economically. Furthermore, Africa's total energy consumption is dominated by biomass to the tune of 50%, the majority of this occurring in rural areas, often using old and inefficient methods that have adverse effects on health, environment, and long-term effects to climate change. Africa needs to connect around 73 million people annually in order to close this gap. This calls for radical and innovative measures, and the Commission is at the forefront of these efforts. The AU plays a critical role in facilitating the creation of the right policy and regulatory environment to accelerate public and private investments in energy. In this regard, we are spearheading harmonization and regulatory frameworks in the electricity sector in order to establish a continent-wide electricity market. A strategy and action plan adopted by the AU policy organs are currently being implemented, and a transmission system tariff methodology and guidelines will be piloted in 2 power pools starting July 2018, before rolling out the rest of the continent. The AU Commission, is also championing innovative financing mechanisms. The flagship Geothermal Risk Mitigation Facility, GRMF, many of your countries are also contributing to this fantastic initiative, supports public and private geothermal energy project developers with grants during the initial and most risky phase of development. This has contributed immensely to geothermal energy development in the Eastern Africa region, where $80 million have been awarded as grants to 26 projects with a potential of 1,500 megawatt across 11 countries. We would like to replicate plans of these models across the continent, also for bioenergy, solar, hydropower, and so on and so forth. Africa is still dependent on fossil fuel up to 80%. Electricity generation by renewable energy is low, with hydro at 16%, solar and wind at 1.3%, geothermal at 0.6%, biofuels and waste to energy at 0.2%, and nuclear at 1.57%. So that is why Africa must change the narrative of her energy development and turn radically towards a more sustainable path using clean and renewable sources. This is much more possible than in the past, given that the prices of renewable energy, as you know, have declined rapidly. This creates enormous opportunities for tackling energy access, growth, and generation of jobs while addressing climate change. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa made history in March 2018, 2 months ago, when 44 African member states signed the Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is one of Agenda 2063 flagship projects, at a special summit in Kigali. This followed closely after another Agenda 2063 project, which is the Single African Air Transport Market, which was launched in January 2018. Availability of sufficient, reliable, affordable, and sustainable energy is key for maximizing the benefits to be reaped from the both flagship projects or these integrating initiatives, both the trade agreement and the air transport agreement. Energy is not only a tradable commodity, but also an enabler and catalyst for productivity for other sectors. The Commission is therefore laying emphasis on energy provision for productive uses, industrialization, and promotion of trade in goods and services among EU members. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the task of developing the energy sector in Africa requires strong partnerships. You know the African proverb, of course, if you want to grow fast, you grow alone. But if you want to grow far, you grow together. We want to grow far and fast. So that is why we are signing today an MOU between the Commission and IEA. And this is a major milestone towards strengthening such important partnership. This is the culmination of a fruitful history of cooperation between the Commission and IEA. It demonstrates the high level of trust built over the years and the potential that can be harnessed in advancing the energy sector development. The Commission looks forward to build upon the shared experiences under this collaboration to improve standards and enhance the robustness of data collection norms, methods, and tools, as well as enhancing the capacity of energy experts involved in these activities. Also, we look forward to learn from the experiences of IEA to develop energy policy analysis tools in order to interpret the Africa energy statistics, to contribute to the strengthening of policy, the strategic planning, including forecasting trends and long-term planning, making use of new concepts in ICT, such as big data. Through the collaboration with IEA, we will build upon achievements, strengthen our capacities even further, increase publications on Africa energy statistics, and enhance their credibility and usage by different stakeholders, including policymakers, planners, financial institutions, private sector, civil society, and academia. We will strengthen the Africa Energy Commission effort to become the first shop of call for energy statistics in Africa. I particularly look forward to improving the statistics and the work on energy and gender and data on clean cooking, as you rightly mentioned. It is critical to establish evidence linking these issues to livelihood improvements, including job creation among women and youth. This will help decision makers formulate the right policies and motivate women and youth to play a greater role in the energy sector. Their contribution will not only lead the benefits associated with increased access and clean cooking energy sources, but will promote women and youth entrepreneurship in the energy sector, plus the associated spillover effects, of course. Again, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on this Africa Day, we Africans have got impatient with moving Africa forward relentlessly. This cannot happen without being totally lit with the power we need to develop our economies and create jobs fast. We are determined to develop Africa with pride and have universal access to energy for all. With these few remarks, I thank you for your kind attention. And happy Africa Day.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Such an inspiring speech on Africa and beyond, I should say. So we are going to have a discussion here, or I should say a chat with Madam Commissioner. But if you have questions, please raise your hand and I will come to you in a couple of minutes. If you want to ask questions to Madam Commissioner, it will be much appreciated. But before going to questions, Madam Commissioner, I should specifically thank the Australian ambassador who just arrived a couple of minutes ago, because he's the one who gave us the venue for free, so that we get another time. I want to thank the ambassador. Thank you very much, Ambassador. So that we guarantee for the next time to get the place. So if I may, Madam Commissioner, about you mentioned the renewables efficiency. These are all very important parts of our work here. But also, you mentioned the role of natural gas. It is rather new, if I may say so, new discoveries in different parts of the Africa, both in the north, but also different parts of the continent. How do you see, if I can start with natural gas, the role of natural gas in the future in the African energy sector?
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. Again, Africa is richly endowed with the sources of energy. Gas is another one that comes to all the sources of energy that we have. I mean, when it comes to hydro, when it comes to solar, wind, I mentioned geothermal. So gas, and before gas, we had oil as well. I mean, Africa is very rich, and as you said, I mean, there are new discoveries in the North and Eastern Africa in addition to other parts of Africa. We cannot not know or not acknowledge these discoveries. It is important at this time and age, and as I mentioned, as we have 600 million people who are not connected, and many women and children are suffering because of the use of biomass, especially for cooking, not to domesticate our gas, for instance, something that is not, unfortunately, happening or not happening at the scale that we wish to see. We cannot have this great potential and this great source of energy, which is, I must add, the cleanest of fossil fuel. It's the cleanest of fossil fuel. That we are not using it also to neighboring countries. We're not using it to have the energy plants. So it is yet another a source of energy that comes to enrich Africa, and we intend to make good use of it. Now, the issue, of course, with natural resources in general, gas included, is the governance of natural resources. And, you know, the literature on that and the world experiences has been vast. In a previous job, because, well, I've been wearing several hats across my life, I was also in natural resources management in the African Development Bank, among so many other things. And we worked extensively, and while the African Development Bank is Africa's economic arm. So we worked extensively into improving the governance of natural resources management, the good use of revenues, making sure that these revenues go into the socio-economic development. So either it's upstream or downstream, there is need to use well, to ensure that there is good governance, to make sure to optimize the use of these resources, both for the direct usages, either it's electricity or energy, or also for socio-economic development.
And this brings me to another issue. I mean, as you rightly mentioned, some of the countries in Africa are fortunate to have gas. Others have, I don't know, hydropower, but the resources are distributed unevenly. This is, and in this context, the regional integration plays an important role, and I think this is one of your preoccupations, how the regional integration in terms of energy can bring value added.
It's true. I mean, not only it's uneven, but it's also our continent is made of 55 countries with small economies. So fragmentation of economies. We need to create economies of scale so as to make the investments attractive also for investors. To reduce the cost, because as we stand, it's either not attractive or the costs are very high. As you said, it's uneven. So the creation of a regional power pools or energy energy projects would help on the attractiveness of these projects. And from our side, I mentioned it in my speech, we are working into the harmonization of policies and regulations, because again, to attract, I mean, to have such an enormous, or such a complex, because often it's very complex, project requires, or the investors find themselves, you know, between several systems, regulations, and it's a headache, so they shy away from it. So we would like to, on the one hand, make sure that this is harmonized for our own benefit, to create the energy market among ourselves, but also to have our projects to make them more attractive and to attract the private sector. This helps in both ways. So it is an enabler for regional integration, and regional integration will further emphasize this aspect. So it's a virtuous circle.
This is definitely, from our point of view as well, regional integration will help to optimize the resources you have for African economic development. I was talking with the Ethiopian ambassador a few minutes ago. As he rightly mentioned, energy is the driver of the economic growth in Africa that we need so much. Now, let me ask you one more question, then turn to floor. Now, when we were discussing a few minutes ago in my office, Madam Commissioner, also in Rome, I feel that you look at all the very important subjects, but you have a very strong passion for clean cooking. Can you explain where does it come from?
It is because I'm a woman, and it's not because I'm a woman.
It is interesting to hear now. So yes.
Well, as a woman, I feel what other women feel, but I'm also a human being. So I also see what is right and what's wrong, regardless. So I mentioned in my talk, I mean, that the issues around cooking or energy for cooking. The way it is now, that the energy comes from biomass, or women who go and get the wood for cooking. So there's this impinges on their time, the time that could have been used effectively for other things. They cook for long hours, and they inhale the smoke, women and children primarily. It affects their health, affects even newborns. So there's a health issue, and you're not without knowing that lives lost because of inhaling these fumes go beyond and are more than the lives that we lose for AIDS and malaria. So we're talking millions of people who die because of that. This we should consider whether we're men or women. It's not. So there's and then there's the element of fairness. Every woman and man has the right to energy access. So the energy poverty, the time poverty. And energy is a major economic sector. We do not see as many women in the training, for instance, not in the important jobs directly related to energy. We want to change that. As I said, we want to change the narrative. So whether you look at it from an economic side, from a human side, from a fairness side or justice side, from a just, it's a moral side, it's not acceptable, and we need to change that.
I think we should applaud this, especially the ladies here. So. Excellent. So the questions for Madam Commissioner. Who would like to start? Mr. Ambassador Van Hoest is the chair of our board from Netherlands, the Dutch ambassador, and we are bringing the microphone quickly.
First of all, happy African Day to you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for sharing your perspective with us. I think it was very useful, very instructive for us. My question is, I was struck by also the emphasis you put on the right policies. And also when you look at the numbers, there are such huge differences also within Africa. Some countries that are really seem to be able to increase tremendously the energy access in a relatively short time, and others are sort of still struggling a lot. So could you perhaps elaborate a little bit on how you and your organization is trying to organize this sort of learning of best practices between countries in the African Union?
Shall I take one? Shall I take another one and then answer this one? Oh, okay. I'll answer that. The point you made, Your Excellency, is not just valid for energy, it's valid for almost all sectors. I mean, again, I mentioned 55 countries. 55 countries that differ among themselves in the levels of development and the levels of development of certain sectors within these countries themselves. So there are two or several levels on which we intervene. One, first, at the regional level. There are active regional economic communities across the continent, and we're trying to, through the work that we do, especially here I'm addressing the issue of energy more specifically, the work that we do and the capacity building that we do, using or benefiting from the experience of certain countries within that region to benefit from that experience and build upon it within that region through programs. I mean, Atif is here, he can maybe later on elaborate on that, on the capacity building and the training and the experience sharing within that region. And then comes at the continental level. We have several venues. One is, I mentioned the policy harmonization. There's another one on the projects and physical implementation. So we want to harmonize also our approach to the physical implementation and benefit from our own experiences. That is done through the PIDA program or the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa. We are also working on several initiatives continent-wide, so as to make certain regions benefit, or certain countries benefit from other countries' experiences. For example, in Kenya, we are establishing a center of excellence of geothermal, because Kenya has proved itself, very efficient in managing this resource, and it's going to be helpful for the whole region. I cannot say that it's every other country in the region is having the same capacity that there is in Kenya in geothermal, for instance. So that's a good example. Earlier, I was talking to Dr. Birol on gas and how to benefit from certain country who has domesticated gas successfully in its, I'm talking here, Egypt, and we have to make the other countries, you know, across the continent benefit from that experience, also how to domesticate gas. So the dialogue and the experience sharing within the continent is happening. We need to push it further. We need to push it further with all due respect to all partners and everyone coming from all countries. You know, I love you all. But there are great experiences in Africa for which we do not necessarily need to import expertise. Or we would import expertise at a specific maybe level that does not exist. But there's lots of wealth of expertise within the continent that we intend to use. Another good example, since I mentioned about Africa, I mean, in innovation. It only happens in Africa when you have a project like Mkopa, the mobile solar, and that is paid for by M-Pesa, which is the mobile money. These are all purely African creations and innovations. So, and now it's spreading across the world. So we're happy not only that we're benefiting each other from these innovations and creativity, we're benefiting the world as well.
Excellent. Now I go to Ambassador Gayani.
Happy African Day from our side as well. We have started commemorating yesterday in Rome, and today we are going on. And we had also the opportunity to underline that it's the 100th birth of Nelson Mandela, a great African that has really enlightened not only Africa, but the whole world. I fully recognize in all what you said, and it has been the constant approach that I have pursued in IEA. Dr. Bilal knows that very well, and I'm very happy that you signed today a MOU between the agency and the African Union. You underlined the economic and social effects of interconnectivity within energy sector. Can we go even further saying that connectivity in energy sector will have also a very positive effect on political integration, on peace enforcement, since once you have real physical connections, it will be impossible to fight, it will be very unlikely to happen this kind of crisis. So in a certain sense, it's both also a very positive, it has also a very positive effects in terms of peace and security.
First of all, let me acknowledge your presence, Mr. Ambassador. I mean, you have also been constantly a good friend. And your presence today here is also another demonstration of this excellent friendship. I'm not talking even individuals, but the friendship with Africa. And your contribution to the energy sector in Africa is very well recognized. And thank you again for making this excellent point. Yesterday, the day before yesterday, I was in the EU, and we were having the college-to-college meeting. And that was at the heart of my intervention, that we cannot talk about peace and security without talking about the fundamentals or the prerequisites for peace and security, which is not only treating or working on the symptoms, but at the root causes. And we have to address the root causes. Root causes, infrastructure and energy. Root causes, this is the backbone for development. This is the condition sine qua non, no development will happen or economic activity will happen, whether it's national, regional, or continent-wide. So when we are talking about energy and transportation, it's not because we want to inaugurate a road or, it's not only that that's great, but if we want to continue on the path that we want our continent to go into, that's development, and also pushing further the regional integration for peace and security, and for a stronger ties through these connections, we have to push the envelope of infrastructure and energy. So I totally 100% agree, and thank you again for making this important point.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. I saw Laszlo here, followed by Laura. Laszlo?
With all due respect, women first.
Okay. Laszlo, is it okay? Okay. Laura Kozi, she's the lady who is behind the African Energy Outlook. Laura, why don't you start?
Thank you very
Before
much.
Laszlo.
Yes, before Laszlo. Sorry, Laszlo. Very nice seeing you again, Madam Commissioner, and thank you for being here with us today for this very inspiring speech. We follow you very, very closely also on Twitter and so on, and we saw that your portfolio also includes digital. And you mentioned MCOPA. Maybe it would be very interesting to hear from you your aspiration for digital Africa and energy access. How do you see them going hand in hand?
Okay, you're taking me to another discussion, which is also I'm very passionate about. We live in the world of ICT everything. This is the revolution 4.0. This is the AI age, and I'm one of those who love technology. And I'm not a technology skeptic or any of this. I know that, and I believe in the human capabilities of harnessing the technology and making it into good use. There will always be some, negative effects here and there, but I believe in the human creativity and potential in harnessing this technology. And energy is not excluded from that. So, and I did mention in my speech big data, for instance. So statistics now takes a different or a completely different meaning when it comes to in the age of this revolution with big data. Soon, maybe we will not need the statistics as we do them currently, because we'll be using this big data already can give us timely and customized and individualized patterns of who does what, when, and how, and to which we can cater and tailor our services and our energy provision, for instance. But ICT, as we speak now, we don't even need to go to the future. I mean, the smart grids is something that this is also using ICT. And I'm pushing also in the work that we do for smart grids, smart corridors, smart infrastructure. Smart infrastructure in its implementation and smart infrastructure in its management. These are the large projects. The smaller projects, again, we have the technology now to allow for, even in the most remote areas, in the smallest communities, to generate maybe through mini grids or off grids or in innovative ways or different ways, so as to provide some supply of energy to these areas or those who have no access, while at the same time using the technology I did mention about the payment through mobile money. So it's ICT everything, it's IoT everywhere, and I'm very happy about it. You will not find in me the skeptic that sometimes, I'm not going to mention famous names, but I'm not that person. I believe in it, and it is changing our world. Now we need to focus on that, and we make sure that we harness it to our benefit. The other element that we need also to consider is the skills development, because even in the energy sector, we have to now rethink the skills that we are providing in each sector, including energy, to make sure that we are also aware of these changes and they are integrated in the work that we do. So these are the two elements.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. You say we don't want to mention famous names, but when we talk before, we talk about a famous name, and the same name I had to talk with when I met the Egyptian ambassador here. I went to meet with him to talk about the Ali is listening me very carefully. We talk about the energy IEA, but most of the discussion was about Mohamed Salah, the Egyptian football player. So we talk about it as well. So may I now turn the floor to...
and this is not, a robot cannot do that.
No, definitely not. We are seeing what is happening tomorrow. So I turn to Laszlo. He's our chief economist his man. And so before any ladies take the floor, please quickly ask your question. So.
Thank you very much for your very, very inspiring contribution. I wonder what is your opinion on the interaction of the two approaches, with projects like Modupi in South Africa or Grand Renaissance in Ethiopia. Some of the largest conventional centralized power generation projects anywhere in the world are under development in Africa. But Africa also has an exciting upswing of bottom-up decentralized solar plus storage solutions. And I very much wonder what is your view on what will be the relative role and relative importance of the two approaches, and also what is your guidance for policymakers in how to manage the interaction between the two?
I don't see any conflict between both. Again, we need energy for various needs, and with various needs comes different models. One of our, for instance, one of our flagship projects is INGA. I mean, I'm talking a huge power pool, huge power pool. We're pursuing that one. At the same time, we're also pursuing the mini hydro and the off-grid and the mini-grid. It's not. We're not here to say, oh, it has to be this model, it has to be this size. There is need for with 600 million people, with 55 countries that are leaping forward and pushing for industrialization and for competitiveness at the global level and for the creation of jobs to 65% of its population. We need, of all sizes. Mini-grid or off-grid is better than no electricity at all. It's not going to push industrialization, that's true. So we have to work also on industrialization and the big power plants that will provide energy for that. We are also urbanizing. I mean, we have also to recognize Africa is the fastest urbanizing continent. And very soon, almost half of the population will be living in cities. So we should not think of energy only for electricity. I mean, energy also, for urban transportation, urban uses. This is going to push, again, the demand even further on. So we should not preclude or leave away any model, but to make sure that not only it's access to all, but also that the needs, the economic needs of the countries, regionally or individually, are being provided.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. Before going to Pascal, our legal counselor, just to tell you that one of the things what we are trying to do, Madam Commissioner, is the sharing experiences between the countries. We learn from one country, pass it to another country. Of course, this may not be copy and paste, but there's a source of inspiration. For example, you mentioned the issue of bioenergy, biofuels, and we have here a Brazilian ambassador with us. Brazil had a major achievement, historic achievement, in terms of making biofuels part of the energy mix. And I think many of our member governments, others are learning from Brazil. And thanks to this MOU, we can transfer that knowledge and experience to Africa, and many things we learn from Africa to other countries around the world. So may I now turn to Pascal Lafont, who is our Chief Legal Counselor. Pascal.
Merci beaucoup, Fatih. Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. And I will set aside the law for just 1 minute, if you allow me. What is your message to all the hard-working families, men, women, for whom Addis is very far, both geographically and perhaps in their daily preoccupations? What do you want to tell them today on this very important occasion?
Again, so what... I did not get that. So a message to women who are working very far from Addis?
It's just that the question perhaps is more, what is the daily impact of the work of the African Commission on the families of Africa? What do you want to tell them in terms of a better future, better access to energy? What do you do for them?
Especially on this very African day.
Okay.
So, of course, yes.
Well, we are all very and extremely encouraged by all the indicators that we're seeing across the continent. I mentioned a few of the innovations and creativity of our young people, of our governments, of our policymakers, and of population across the continent. And that to see and to say that in the fastest growing economies of the world, several are Africans. I mean, this is a source of great pleasure and pride. And this wouldn't have happened without the work and the commitment of each and every person across the continent that has been working hard for this to happen, for their own communities, families, but also for the good of the continent at all. The African Union itself is availing itself and is determined to make itself also more relevant, because we, since we came we were elected last year, we came with a clear mandate as well. The mandate is not only to provide, for the mandate that previously we had, the socio-economic development and the integration of the continent, but to make this organization relevant to every African. So we are availing ourselves, we are reforming ourselves also to make the work that we do and the vision that we share with everyone, make everything more relevant to each and every African across the continent. And all the things that you see us doing today and beyond and yesterday is going to that direction. We're very, very much encouraged by the positive results that we're seeing. To say that only this year, in 1 year, we launched 3 flagship projects to integrate the continent: free trade area, free skies, free air transport, and free movement of people. Some say this did not happen in decades in Africa. That happened in 1 year. So imagine the 3 coming years.
Okay. And maybe beyond that, hopefully. Now, may I turn to Paulo? Paulo Frankel is our head of our renewable energy division.
First of all, thank you so much.
And the man, but yes, we cannot.
This I cannot change easy. No. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being with us today in such an important day. I heard with interest you mentioning the geothermal risk mitigation facility, and you also said it's your intention to expand this to other renewable energy sources. Could you elaborate a little bit on this? And do you think that this could be a key tool to accelerate the velocity at which renewables could expand to unlock the huge potential of renewables in the continent? Thank you.
Thank you. I was specifically alluding to this interesting model of including the private sector in the work that we do in geothermal. So the model has proved to be overall successful. Of course, within the 11 countries in which to intervene, some are slower than others. Some, to get the license for the private sector, they still have issues, but slowly but surely. In others, it has been growing faster. So we're interested in seeing this model work both for geothermal, but how can we extend it or see it replicated in other forms of renewable energy across the continent. And for that, some good experiences also, not necessarily AU initiatives, have been happening across the continent. We are taking stock of that. The idea is, with the 600 million people not having access, the $70 billion needed yearly for the energy sector to bridge the energy deficit in the continent, we will not be, no government, no organization will be able to do that on its own. So unless the private sector is involved, both for expertise and for investment, we will not succeed. So that's why I mentioned geothermal. It was with a clear message on the model, making sure that the private sector is part and parcel and a full stakeholder in the process, both at the design and the implementation and the delivery.
Thank you very much. We have one last question we can take, and afterwards we will have the, and I have one more question, and afterwards we have the ceremony. Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner. I'm not a woman either, but I come from a very small country whose identity could be interpreted as woman. I come from Estonia. I'm an energy advisor. Yes, thank you very much. So thank you for your very inspiring speech. My question is related to the waste. I know it is also a big issue in Africa. It is a big issue in our countries as well. Although we have established some waste-based power plants, but still it is an issue. So what is your view on how to, reduce waste and, related to the energy production? Thank you.
First of all, let me, you said you're Estonia. I was in Estonia last year, and we worked closely with Estonia on ICT and e-governance. And I have a theory, it's yet to be verified. You always say you're a small country, but you're everywhere. Wherever I go, I find Estonians. So I am challenging your census. I'm challenging the census of Estonia to know exactly how much Estonians there are around the world. But anyway, your country is providing the whole world, not just Europe, is providing the whole world with a great success story. A country that leaped forward within even two decades and made astonishing progress on all fronts using the technology, the very technology I was talking about earlier, and that is why I'm working with your country on e-governance also across the continent, to develop e-governance across the continent. And why not? I mean, e-governance includes so many things. Why not also think of energy? The issue of waste, several things. Upstream. Many of our countries now are rethinking the waste and waste management, introducing laws and very firm ones against, for instance, plastic, like Kenya and Rwanda. But we have examples like Ethiopia, where there are plants now to compost, to use this waste for energy, to convert it into energy. Many of our countries now are thinking and rethinking their economic model to be a more circular one. So I cannot pretend that we have, as African Union, that we do have a policy on that yet. But what I know is that across the continent, there's lots of work that is happening on waste management and on as part of the environmental policies in general. And especially for energy, as I said, there are several across the continent now who are using waste for energy as well.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. I have one question which is not much to do with energy. You see there are many ladies here, and we are at the IEA, we are about 280 people, and we want to see that the share of women within the IEA workforce increases in the right way. And you have worked several years in your career in different organizations, public, private, and you have a very important position now. What, if any, if you want to give a piece of advice to the women working here at the IEA or the diplomats, young diplomats here, what kind of advice you would give them as a woman?
I'm not giving advices.
It's a professional advice.
As a professional, woman or man, one, be yourself. You don't need to look or act or sound like a man, not at all. Be yourself. Two, be very good at what you do. You only impose yourself by your knowledge, your capacity, the good work, and the delivery, and the results that you provide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Excellencies, dear colleagues, we will be in a few minutes signing a very important agreement between the African Union and the IEA. But what we understood from your speech and answering all of our questions, Madam Commissioner, you have a very tough job. Looking at the order of magnitude of the challenges that Africa has and the critical importance the energy has here, very difficult, I wouldn't say impossible, but a very difficult one. Ambassador Gayani mentioned Nelson Mandela, so he's a hero of, I think, many of us, including myself. He once said that it only seems impossible until it is done. So we know that you will do it, and we are with you. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, may I also invite your host, your ambassador from Ethiopia, and our governing board chair to be with us during the signing ceremony. Mr. Ambassador and Ambassador Van Hulst. So, dear colleagues, now we would like to invite you for a drink outside, and you will have the chance to discuss with Madam Commissioner and also other African ambassador guests and all of the experts. Once again, thank you very much for coming here. Once again, thank you very much to Australia, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you, and see you later. Thank you.